The scent of lemon polish and old books clung to the air, a familiar comfort that now felt like a suffocating blanket. The house was too quiet. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind against the window panes was a new note in a symphony of silence that had replaced my mother's voice. It had been 3 weeks since Eleanor's funeral, and the weight of her absence was heavier than any grief I'd ever known. I was a man of 47, a carpenter by trade, and I found solace in the simple, predictable rhythm of my work. The saw, the hammer, the wood grain, these were things I understood. They had no hidden motives, no sharp tongues. They didn't leave, unlike Sarah. Her name was a scar, faded but still tender, a constant reminder of a life I once thought I had, and the mockery she left me with. "You'll never be more than a laborer, Ethan," she'd sneered 7 years ago, her eyes cold and her luggage packed. I deserve more than this. She had wanted a life of luxury, and my hands, calloused from honest work, were not enough. I was not enough. My mother, Eleanor, was the only one who didn't see me that way. She saw the man, not the bank account. She saw the love I put into every piece of furniture, every repaired fence. She saw me. Her life was simple, or so I thought. She was a retired school librarian, and her world seemed to revolve around her small garden, her beloved mystery novels, and me. She lived frugally, always reminding me to save, to be smart with my money. "A dollar saved is a dollar earned, Ethan," she would say, a mantra I now lived by out of necessity. The lawyer's call had been unexpected. I'd expected nothing more than the house and maybe a few $1,000s in a savings account. She wasn't a woman of great means, or so I believed. Mr. Henderson, a man whose voice was as smooth as polished mahogany, had requested my presence at his office to discuss my mother's estate. "It's a matter of some complexity, Mr. Carter," he'd said. I'd shrugged it off, assuming it was just legal jargon. Walking into his office was like stepping into a different world. The reception area was all marble and glass, a stark contrast to my worn work boots and faded flannel shirt. The air smelled of expensive coffee and success, a scent I was completely unfamiliar with. Mr. Henderson greeted me with a solemn yet knowing smile. He motioned for me to sit on a plush leather chair that swallowed me whole. He laid out a file, thick and intimidating, on the gleaming mahogany desk. "Mr. Carter," he began, his voice low and serious, "your mother, Eleanor, was a very private woman. She was also a very shrewd investor." My brow furrowed. "My mother? She clipped coupons, Mr. Henderson. She negotiated with the butcher for a better price on ground beef." He offered a small, sad smile. "That was for show, I believe. Your mother was a brilliant businesswoman. She began investing in real estate when it was still a fledgling market, buying up undervalued properties in developing neighborhoods. She used a series of shell companies and trusts to keep her name out of public records. It was her secret passion, her legacy." My mind reeled. The woman who wore the same old cardigan for 10 years, who drove a 20-year-old sedan, who bought my clothes at a clearance rack. She was a real estate mogul. It sounded like a bad joke. "I don't understand," I stammered. Mr. Henderson opened the file and began to list them. Properties in downtown Phoenix, apartment complexes in suburban Scottsdale, undeveloped land on the outskirts of Tucson. The names and addresses blurred together, a dizzying list of assets that sounded like they belonged to a fictional character, not my mother. "And her personal assets," he continued, turning a page. "Stocks, bonds, a substantial portfolio in blue-chip companies, and a rather large sum in a private bank account." He paused, looking at me with a gaze that held a mixture of pity and respect. "Mr. Carter, your mother's total estate is valued at just over $38 million. The words hung in the air, a surreal, impossible pronouncement. My ears were ringing. $38 million. It was a number so large it felt meaningless. It belonged to movie stars, to tech moguls, not to me. Not to the man whose hands were stained with varnish and whose biggest financial worry was replacing a broken power tool. I finally managed to speak, my voice a whisper. "Why? Why did she keep this a secret?" "She was protective of you, Mr. Carter," he said gently. "She was afraid that if you knew, people would try to take advantage of you. She saw how your ex-wife treated you, and she wanted to ensure that you would be able to live your life on your own terms without the influence of others, until the right time. Tears pricked my eyes, not of sadness but of a profound, overwhelming love. My mother, my frugal, secretive, incredible mother, had been planning for my future my entire life. She had built an empire in the shadows, all for me. The truth hit me with the force of a tidal wave. She wasn't just my mother. She was my silent guardian, my fierce protector, and her final act was to give me the one thing I never knew I needed: freedom. I walked out of that office a different man. The weight of her absence was still there, but now it was mixed with a new, heavier burden, the weight of a secret fortune, a fortune that was about to change everything, and I had a terrible feeling that it wouldn't be for the better. The phone buzzed in my pocket, and when I looked at the screen, my heart stopped. It was a message from an unfamiliar number. "Ethan, it's Sarah. I heard about your mum. I'm so sorry for your loss. I need to talk to you. I'm back in town." I stared at the phone, the words a burning brand against my vision. Sarah. I'm back in town. My stomach twisted into a knot of disbelief and a simmering anger I hadn't felt in years. 7 years of silence, of living with the echo of her dismissal, and now at this exact moment she appears. It was too convenient, too perfectly timed to be a coincidence. Her apology for my loss felt hollow, a flimsy disguise for what I suspected was her true motivation. I didn't reply, I couldn't. My hands were shaking. I put the phone down on the passenger seat of my old pickup truck and gripped the steering wheel, the worn leather a familiar anchor. The city lights of Phoenix blurred as I drove away from Mr. Henderson's office, the concrete jungle feeling more suffocating than ever. I needed the quiet, the empty house, to process this new reality. The man I was a few hours ago, the one who was just Ethan, the carpenter, felt like a ghost. This new Ethan, a man with a fortune, was a stranger. When I got home, I stood in the driveway, looking at the house. My mother's house. The house I grew up in. It was a modest ranch-style home, but it felt like a palace now. Every window, every brick held a new meaning. It was the first piece of the empire she'd built for me. I walked through the front door, the scent of her still faint in the air, and went straight to her study. It was a small room filled with bookshelves and a worn armchair. Her journals sat on a small table, a stack of them bound with twine. I had never touched them before, respecting her privacy. Now they felt like the only connection I had left to her. I sat in her chair and opened the top journal, the pages brittle with age. Her neat, flowing script filled the page, a window into a life I never knew. She wrote about her day-to-day life, the things I recognized, her favorite customers at the library, the progress of her tomato plants. But then, interspersed between the mundane, were entries about her other life. Closed on the apartment building on 7th Street today. The seller was a bit of a shark, but I held my ground. This will be a good investment for Ethan's future. The words hit me with the force of a punch. She'd been doing this for decades, all for me. Every negotiation, every deal was a testament to her love. My phone vibrated again, a new message from Sarah. "Ethan, please, it's important. I'm at the old coffee shop downtown." The coffee shop where we had our first date. The audacity was breathtaking. She was trying to pull on threads of nostalgia, to make me forget the years of scorn. I felt a cold fury rise within me, a protective shield against her carefully crafted manipulation. I decided I wouldn't go. Not tonight. I needed to understand what my mother had done, what she had built for me before I faced the ghost of my past. The next day, I drove back to Mr. Henderson's office. I had 1,000 questions, and I needed answers. He laid out the full scope of the estate, a dizzying map of properties and investments. He explained the trusts she had set up, the legal intricacies of the inheritance. He also revealed the existence of a separate, private fund she had established years ago for a specific purpose. "Your mother wanted to ensure you had a freedom fund, as she called it," Mr. Henderson explained. "A large sum of money with no restrictions to be used however you see fit." The number was staggering. $5 million. She had planned for every contingency, every possibility, to ensure my future was secure. That night, I received a call from an old friend, Mark, a man I'd known since high school. He had been a groomsman at my wedding. He had seen the way Sarah treated me. We had drifted apart after my divorce, but he was one of the few people who knew the real story. He was a successful real estate agent, and I told him the truth, the incredible truth about my mother's secret life. "Ethan, you're telling me your mum was a real estate mogul," he said, his voice a mix of disbelief and awe. "Eleanor? Man, that is unbelievable. And Sarah's back. You have to be kidding me." "It gets better," I said, a bitter laugh escaping me. "She messaged me, asking to meet." "Don't do it, man," Mark said immediately. "She's not back for you. She's back for what she thinks you have, I guarantee it. Her life didn't turn out like she planned. Her ex-husband, the wealthy guy she left you for, he lost everything in a bad business deal. I saw it on the news a few months ago." Mark's words were a cold splash of reality. He confirmed my darkest suspicions. Sarah wasn't back because she had a change of heart. She was back because she was desperate, and I was now her last resort. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. I had spent the past week mourning my mother and wrestling with my new reality. Now the anger at Sarah, the anger at her audacity, had focused my mind. I was no longer a victim. I was the keeper of my mother's legacy. I would not let her, or anyone else, take that from me. I was not the man she left behind. I was not the man who was so easily mocked and discarded. I was the son of Eleanor Carter, and I had inherited not just a fortune, but a strength I never knew I had. I opened the contact list on my phone, found Sarah's number and wrote a reply, my fingers steady this time. "Let's meet. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. at the old coffee shop. Don't be late." The air in the coffee shop was thick with the scent of roasted beans and my own nervous energy. I chose a small table in a quiet corner, my back to the wall, a strategic position to observe her as she walked in. I wore a simple polo shirt and jeans, my usual attire, a silent refusal to change for her, to impress her with my new status. I wanted her to see the same man she had abandoned, to see the one she had mocked, before she saw the man who had inherited a fortune. Punctual as ever, she arrived at 10 sharp. She looked different, not in a bad way, just older. The carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the faint lines around her eyes, and her stylish clothes, while expensive, looked a little too tight, a little too worn. She wasn't the same glossy, confident woman who had walked out on me 7 years ago. She saw me, and a practiced smile, a mix of warmth and regret, spread across her face. "Ethan," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. She sat down and looked at me with an intensity I hadn't seen since the early days of our marriage. "Thank you for meeting me. I'm so sorry about your mum. She was a good woman." The words felt like a performance. "She was," I said, my voice flat. I didn't return the sentiment. "I can't imagine what you're going through," she continued, her hands fidgeting with her coffee cup. "She was always so kind to me, even when I—" She trailed off, a hint of genuine emotion in her eyes. It was a fleeting moment, gone as quickly as it came, replaced by the familiar calculation. "You left," I said, the words a blunt instrument, cutting through her carefully constructed apology. "You left because I wasn't good enough, because I didn't have enough money. You said it yourself." Her composure faltered. "That's not fair, Ethan. I was young, I was foolish, I made mistakes. I thought I knew what I wanted, but life has a way of teaching you lessons." "Lessons?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping me. "What lesson was that, Sarah? That the grass isn't always greener? That the rich man you left me for wasn't so rich after all?" Her face paled. The shock on her face was a confirmation. She hadn't known that I knew about her ex-husband's financial ruin. The performance was over. The truth was out. She leaned forward, her voice low and desperate. "Ethan, I made a mistake. I never stopped loving you. I was just lost. I've had a lot of time to think, and I realized that the life I had with you, the simple life, was what truly made me happy." I looked at her, at the woman who had spent 7 years mocking me, who had left me for a better life, and now she was here, claiming she loved me. It was a lie. A transparent, desperate lie. "You don't want me, Sarah," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You want the $38 million my mother left me." Her eyes widened in genuine surprise, a flicker of panic. "$38 million? I didn't know it was that much. I heard you got an inheritance." The lie was so thin it was pathetic. "You heard I got an inheritance and suddenly you remembered how much you loved me." I stood up, the chair scraping against the concrete floor. "I'm not the man you left, Sarah. I'm not that naive, insecure boy anymore. You taught me a valuable lesson too. You taught me that love can be conditional, that people can be cruel, and that the only person you can truly trust is yourself." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't believe them. I had seen her cry before, seen her use tears as a weapon. This was another performance, another attempt to manipulate me into a life she now craved. "Ethan, please, we can start over. For old times' sake, I've changed, I swear." "I have changed too," I said, looking her straight in the eyes. "I'm a different man. My mother's legacy wasn't just a fortune, Sarah. It was a lesson in self-worth. She taught me that I was enough, even when you said I wasn't. Now I have what you wanted, but I'm not going to let you have it. You made your choice 7 years ago. Live with it." I turned and walked away, leaving her sitting alone at the table, her head in her hands. The rage I had felt earlier had dissipated, replaced by a quiet sense of victory. The man she had mocked was gone. In his place was a man who knew his value, a man who understood that true wealth wasn't in a bank account, but in the love of a mother who believed in him when no one else did. As I walked out of the coffee shop, my phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Henderson. "A new development. Your mother's will has a special provision. Please come to the office as soon as you can." My victory was short-lived. A new mystery, a new challenge was waiting for me, and a new lesson from the mother who had planned every step of my life, even from beyond the grave. Mr. Henderson's office was no longer a place of awe, but a source of intrigue. The leather chair felt less intimidating, the gleaming desk less imposing. I sat down, a sense of weary anticipation settling over me. The meeting with Sarah had left me drained, but also strangely empowered. I had faced the ghost of my past and sent her packing. Now it was time to face the complexities of my future. "Mr. Carter," Mr. Henderson began, his tone more personal this time, "your mother was a woman of immense foresight. The will has a specific clause that she insisted on. It's a condition to the inheritance of the bulk of the estate." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "The will states that you must, within 1 year, successfully manage and grow her portfolio. You are to work with a team of financial advisors and a project manager she's already selected. If you fail, the assets will be liquidated and donated to a series of charities, which she also named." My jaw dropped. She put a test in the will?" "It's not a test, Mr. Carter," he corrected me gently. "It's a lesson. Your mother knew you were a man of integrity, but she was concerned you didn't have the experience to handle such a large estate. She wanted to ensure that you built a legacy of your own, that you didn't just inherit a fortune, but earned it through your own hard work. She wanted to protect you from those who would take advantage of you. This process is designed to give you the skills and the knowledge to do so." The weight of this new reality settled on me. It wasn't just a fortune. It was a responsibility. It was a challenge, a final project from the woman who had secretly been my greatest mentor. She hadn't just given me wealth. She had given me a path to self-sufficiency, a way to prove to myself that I was capable of more than I ever imagined. The carpentry skills that had defined my life felt suddenly inadequate. My world had just expanded, and I was ill-equipped to navigate it. Mr. Henderson handed me a folder. "This is the information for the team she selected. A financial advisor named Robert Chen and a project manager named Emily Hayes. They are both highly respected in their fields. Your mother worked with them on a few projects over the years and trusted them implicitly. They're expecting your call." I walked out of the office with a new kind of dread. The silence of my mother's house, which had been a comfort, now felt like a tomb. I was surrounded by her legacy, and I had no idea how to live up to it. The sheer scale of the task felt impossible. I wasn't a businessman. I was a man who worked with his hands, who built things from the ground up. This was a different kind of building, one that required numbers and contracts and a language I didn't speak. I spent the next few days in a state of paralyzing anxiety, the folder sitting on my kitchen counter like a ticking bomb. I finally reached out to Mark, my old friend, and told him about the will's condition. "Man, your mom was one of a kind," he said, a note of admiration in his voice. "She didn't just give you a fish, she taught you how to fish. This is her way of making sure you don't get swindled. You're a smart guy, Ethan. You can do this. You have a team. You don't have to do it alone." Mark's words were a lifeline. He was right. I wasn't alone. My mother had made sure of it. I decided to start with a phone call. I dialed the number for Emily Hayes, the project manager. A crisp, professional voice answered. "Hello, this is Emily Hayes." "Hi, my name is Ethan Carter. I'm the son of Eleanor Carter. Mr. Henderson said you were expecting my call." "Yes, Mr. Carter, I am. I'm so sorry for your loss. Your mother was a remarkable woman. She spoke very highly of you." Her voice was kind but firm, a perfect mix of empathy and professionalism. "She told me about your carpentry work. She was very proud of it." My chest tightened. My mother had talked about me to this woman, a professional she trusted. She had been proud of my simple life, even as she was secretly building a complex one for me. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Your mother gave me a brief on what she expects," Emily continued. "We need to get to work immediately if we want to meet the deadline. I can meet you at the primary property on Central Avenue tomorrow at 9 a.m. Does that work for you?" I took a deep breath. Yes, that works perfectly." As I hung up the phone, a new sense of resolve settled in. This wasn't just about inheriting a fortune. It was about honoring my mother's legacy, her trust in me. It was about proving to myself and to her that I was worthy of this incredible gift. I was no longer just a carpenter. I was an heir, a student, and a man on a journey to discover a strength I never knew I possessed. The property on Central Avenue was a nondescript apartment complex, a 2-story brick building that looked like it had seen better days. It was just one of many, a drop in the ocean of properties my mother had acquired. But as I stood there, waiting for Emily Hayes, it felt like the entire weight of the empire was on my shoulders. A sleek black sedan pulled up, and a woman in a sharp business suit stepped out. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her late 30s, with an air of quiet confidence that was both impressive and intimidating. "Mr. Carter?" she asked, her voice as professional as it had been on the phone. "I'm Emily Hayes." "Just Ethan, please," I said, extending my hand. Her handshake was firm, her eyes direct and intelligent. "Ethan, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Your mother was very clear that she wanted you to be involved in every aspect of this. She wanted you to understand what you've inherited." She gestured to the building. "This place is a perfect example. It's a good property, but it's underperforming. The rent is too low, the maintenance is lacking. We can turn it around, but it will take a lot of work." She handed me a detailed report, a binder full of charts, graphs, and financial projections that made my head spin. My eyes scanned the pages, looking for something I understood. I found it in a section on maintenance costs. The numbers were too high, the repairs shoddy. I had worked on properties like this before, knew the shortcuts and the bad work. This was a language I spoke. "The plumbing is a mess," I said, pointing to a line in the report, "and the electrical system needs a complete overhaul. That's why the utility bills are so high. A good contractor could fix this for half the price." A small smile touched Emily's lips. "Exactly. Your mother knew you had this eye for detail. This is your expertise, Ethan. We'll bring in the right people, but your knowledge of the practical, on-the-ground work will be invaluable. You're not just an investor, you're a manager, you're a part of this team." Over the next few weeks, my life became a whirlwind of meetings, site visits, and late-night calls. I met with Robert Chen, the financial advisor, a quiet and brilliant man who spoke in a language of stocks and bonds that I was slowly starting to understand. Emily became my guide, my mentor, teaching me the ropes of property management, the art of negotiation, and the importance of a solid business plan. She was tough but fair, demanding but patient. I also discovered another secret my mother had kept, a network of people she had quietly helped over the years. The caretaker of one of her properties, an elderly man named George, told me how my mother had bought his home when he was about to lose it, and then allowed him to continue living there, paying a small, symbolic rent. "She wasn't just a landlord, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She was an angel. She told me she was saving the property for a rainy day, but I know she was saving me." Each revelation about my mother was a new layer to a woman I thought I knew. She was not just a hoarder of money. She was a quiet philanthropist, a builder of lives, a protector of the vulnerable. Her wealth was not a symbol of greed, but a tool for good. And that made me even more determined to succeed, to honor her legacy. One evening, as I was going through some old documents, I found a letter from my mother. It was dated a year before she passed. "My dearest Ethan," she had written, "I've seen the pain you've carried since Sarah left. I want you to know that her departure had nothing to do with your worth. It had everything to do with her lack of it. People who belittle others to make themselves feel bigger are empty inside. Her return, should it ever happen, will be a testament to her emptiness, not to your newfound success. Use your new life to build something real, to find a love that is unconditional and a happiness that is your own, not one that depends on anyone else. Always remember, my dear boy, you are more than enough. You always have been." The letter brought tears to my eyes. My mother hadn't just planned for my financial future. She had been preparing me for this moment, for this confrontation with Sarah, for this new reality. She had given me not just wealth, but a sense of self-worth that no amount of money could buy. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" "Ethan, it's Sarah. I know you're busy, but I really need to talk to you. It's about our daughter." The words hit me like a physical blow. Our daughter. Sarah had left with a man who had a daughter, but we had never had children of our own. The lie was so audacious, so manipulative that it took my breath away. But a cold, terrible thought began to form in my mind. What if it wasn't a lie? What if the life she had told me was a lie, and the truth was something else entirely? A new, more dangerous game had just begun. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against the silence of my home. "Our daughter," I repeated, my voice a strained whisper. The audacity of the statement was so immense, so illogical, that I could barely process it. "Sarah, what are you talking about? We never had a child." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, a breath held, and then exhaled slowly. "Ethan, please, I need to explain. Can we meet? Just you and me. No drama, just to talk. It's important. It's about more than just money." The old part of me, the one that still held a flickering candle of a memory for the woman I once loved, wanted to believe her. But the new Ethan, the one forged in the fires of betrayal and grief, knew better. "You're lying, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "I don't know what game you're playing, but it ends now. Don't contact me again." I hung up the phone, my hand shaking with a mixture of anger and a cold, creeping dread. The next morning I told Mark about the call. He was furious. "That's a new low, man. A new, desperate low. She's trying to get under your skin. Don't fall for it." "What if she's not lying?" I said, the words heavy on my tongue. "What if the life she lived, the one she told me about, was a lie? What if she has a daughter, and she's trying to pin it on me for some reason?" "Ethan, you're spiraling," Mark said, his voice a steady anchor. "You know the dates, you know your life. It's not possible. She's manipulating you. She's seen that the money card didn't work, so now she's going for the emotional one. It's the oldest trick in the book." I knew he was right, but the thought had taken root, a tiny, poisonous seed of doubt. I couldn't shake it. It haunted me during my meetings with Emily and Robert. It was a distraction I couldn't afford. The work was challenging, but also exhilarating. We were in the process of a major renovation on the Central Avenue property, and I was in my element. I was the on-site project manager, a bridge between the architects, the contractors, and the financial team. My hands, once only skilled with a hammer and saw, were now equally adept at reading blueprints and managing budgets. I was learning to build not just a house, but a business. One afternoon, I was at the Central Avenue property, overseeing the installation of new windows, when a car pulled up. It was Sarah. She got out of the car, and from the back seat, a little girl emerged. She looked about 5 or 6 years old, with bright, curious eyes and a shy smile. My heart sank. "Ethan, please," Sarah said, her voice pleading. "Just talk to me, just for a minute." The little girl, a beautiful child with Sarah's eyes, looked at me with an innocence that was heartbreaking. She was a weapon, a shield, and a hostage all at once. I felt a surge of rage so intense it made my head spin. I couldn't believe she would use a child like this. "What do you want, Sarah?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "What is this?" "This is Lily," she said, her voice trembling with what I could only assume was feigned emotion. "And she's your daughter." The lie was so bold, so calculated, so cruelly delivered that it took me a moment to respond. But as I looked at the little girl, a new, more terrible possibility formed in my mind. What if she was telling the truth? A wave of nausea washed over me. No, it was impossible. But the doubt, the insidious little seed she had planted, had now blossomed into a full-blown fear. "We need to talk," I said, my voice flat. "Now, without her." I gestured to the little girl. "You need to take her somewhere safe. She shouldn't be a part of this." Sarah looked at me, a flicker of something in her eyes I couldn't place. It wasn't triumph, it wasn't sorrow. It was, something else. Something I couldn't read. She nodded. "I'll be at the diner on Main Street in an hour." I watched as she put the little girl back in the car and drove away. The sight of the child, a pawn in a game I didn't understand, made my blood run cold. I called Mark. "She showed up at the site, Mark, with a little girl. She says it's my daughter." I relayed the story, my voice a monotone of shock and disbelief. "Ethan, man, this is completely off the rails," he said, his voice laced with concern. "Do not give her a dime. Do not accept anything. She's a professional manipulator. She's playing you." "I know," I said, though a part of me didn't. "But I have to know. I have to hear her out, just to get this sickness out of my gut." I knew what I was doing was dangerous. I was walking straight into a trap. But I had to know the truth. For the sake of the little girl, for the sake of the life I was trying to build, and for the sake of my own sanity. I would go to the diner, and I would get to the bottom of this, whatever the cost. The diner on Main Street was a place of ghosts and memories. Sarah and I had come here on our first date, a lifetime ago. The scent of burnt coffee and greasy food filled the air, a nostalgic, bitter perfume. I sat in a booth waiting for her, my mind a storm of questions and anxieties. The image of the little girl, Lily, was burned into my mind. Her eyes, so much like Sarah's, but filled with an innocence that was a stark contrast to the ugliness of the situation. Sarah walked in, her face pale and drawn. She sat across from me, her hands clasped on the table. There was no theatrical performance this time, no fake tears or practiced smiles. She looked exhausted, defeated. "I'm not going to lie to you anymore, Ethan," she began, her voice low and broken. "Lily is not our daughter. She's my daughter with Mark." The name hit me like a physical blow. Mark, my friend, my rock, my sanity. "Mark?" I said, the word a disbelieving croak. "What are you talking about?" "Not Mark, your friend. The man I left you for," she clarified, her voice barely a whisper. "His name is Mark. He was the CEO of a tech company. He promised me the world, Ethan. He promised me a life of luxury and endless opportunity. And for a while, he delivered." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a grief so profound it felt real. "He was a good man, Ethan, and he was a good father, but he was also a reckless businessman. He lost everything in the market crash 3 years ago. The houses, the cars, the money. It all disappeared. He couldn't handle the loss. He took his own life last year." A stunned silence filled the booth. My mind, which had been racing 1,000 miles an hour, came to a screeching halt. The truth was so much more tragic and so much more human than any manipulation I could have imagined. I had been so focused on her lies, on her cruelty, that I had never considered her pain. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," I said, the words coming from a place of genuine empathy. She shook her head, a tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. "I came back to town because I had nowhere else to go. All of my family disowned me after I left you, his family. They blamed me for his death. I have nothing left, Ethan, just Lily and a mountain of debt. And I can't find a job. Everyone sees the name, the face from the news, the widow of the bankrupt CEO. I came to you because you were the only person I knew who would listen. You were always so kind, even when I was cruel." The lie about our daughter, the use of a child as a shield, suddenly made a twisted kind of sense. It was a desperate act born out of a desperate situation. She was so broken, so lost, that she had resorted to a tactic she thought would work on the man she had once so easily manipulated. She hadn't expected me to be a different person. "I'm not asking for your money, Ethan," she said, looking me in the eye, the honesty in her gaze a stark contrast to our last meeting. I need a job. I'm a good project manager. I've been helping some friends with their businesses. I'm a hard worker. I just need a chance, a fresh start. I've learned my lesson, Ethan. I just want to prove that I'm not the person I was 7 years ago. I want to build a life for my daughter, a life I can be proud of, a life she deserves." I looked at her, at the woman who was a ghost of her former self, and saw for the first time not a monster, but a human being who had made a series of terrible choices and was now paying the ultimate price. My mother had taught me that I had a strength I never knew I possessed. Now she was teaching me a new lesson: forgiveness. Not just for others, but for myself, for the years I had wasted on anger and resentment. I took a deep breath. "I'll do what I can," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I can't give you a job in my company, not yet. But I can pay for a consultant, a project manager for a special project. You'll work with Emily and you'll report to her. You'll have to prove yourself. And the pay will be fair, but not extravagant, just enough to get you back on your feet. And you will not tell anyone about this, especially not the press. This is a one-time opportunity, and this is not for me. This is for Lily. She deserves a chance, a life free from your past, and you need to work for it." Her eyes filled with genuine tears this time, tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan. Thank you so much. I won't let you down. I swear." I didn't expect a promise. I expected hard work. I didn't give her a second chance out of pity, but out of a sense of duty, a sense of justice. My mother's legacy wasn't just a fortune. It was a way of living, a path to building something real, to helping others, and to finding the strength to move past the pain of the past. The road to forgiveness was long, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. The first few weeks of Sarah's employment were a strange mix of professionalism and unspoken tension. She was a different person at work, focused and efficient. She had a sharp mind for logistics and a surprising ability to handle difficult contractors. She was a natural project manager. Her work was excellent, and she earned the respect of Emily, who, to her credit, treated Sarah with the same professional detachment and high expectations she showed everyone else. I had been worried that our past would interfere with the business, that the old resentments would bubble to the surface, but we were both too busy, too consumed by the demands of the projects, to dwell on the past. We spoke only when necessary, about budgets and timelines, not about the emotional baggage we carried. The business was a neutral territory, a place where we could both rebuild, both heal. My relationship with my friend, Mark, grew stronger. I had told him the full story about Sarah, her dead husband, and the child. He was shocked but also supportive. "Man, I'm glad you figured it out," he said, his voice full of relief. "You're a better man than I am, Ethan. I don't know if I could have done that. Let's just say you've inherited more than money. You've inherited your mum's heart." He was right. My mother's journals were a constant source of inspiration. I read them every night, a chapter of her life, a lesson in foresight and compassion. She wrote about her fears, her triumphs, and her one great purpose: building a safe and secure future for me. She had never been a woman who spoke of her emotions freely, but her journals were a testament to her profound, unconditional love. I found an entry from a few years ago that stopped me in my tracks. I saw Ethan today, working on that fence for Mrs. Davis. His hands so strong and steady, so full of purpose. I wish he could see what I see, a man of quiet integrity. Sarah's words, "He'll never be more than a laborer," are a lie. He's already a man of great worth. I just need to give him the resources to show the world. He doesn't need a fortune to be a good man, but he needs a fortune to protect himself from the cruelties of the world. Tears welled in my eyes. The woman who had been my protector, my silent guardian, had seen through Sarah's cruelty and had spent a lifetime building a fortress of wealth to shield me from it. My inheritance wasn't a reward for a job well done. It was a testament to her undying love. The business was thriving. The property on Central Avenue was completely renovated and fully occupied. We had used the profits to buy and renovate 2 more buildings. I was no longer just the man with the hammer. I was a man with a vision. I was a leader. I was doing what my mother had done, not just building properties, but building communities, building futures. I was hiring people, giving them good wages, and providing them with a safe and secure place to live. One day Sarah came to my office, an old workshop I had turned into a functional space. It still smelled of sawdust and varnish, a constant reminder of the man I used to be. "Ethan," she said, her voice hesitant. "Lily needs to see a specialist. She has a heart murmur." "The insurance, it's not going to cover it all. I have the money for the first appointment, but—" She trailed off, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. The old Ethan would have been furious, would have seen this as another one of her games. But the new Ethan saw a mother, terrified for her child. "I'll cover it," I said without hesitation. "It's a business expense, a special consultant bonus. You're working for me, and your daughter is a part of that. I won't let anything happen to her. And I will not take a single cent from you. You will pay me back with your work. You will earn it and then some." A look of profound relief and gratitude washed over her face. "Ethan, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much." "Don't thank me," I said, a new kind of calm settling in me. "Thank my mother. She taught me how to do this, how to build, and how to help." The next morning, I saw her with Lily. She was dropping her off at school. The little girl, her backpack a bright splash of color against her small frame, turned and waved at her mother. Sarah waved back, a genuine, unguarded smile on her face. For the first time, I saw her not as a schemer, not as an ex-wife, but as a mother, a human being trying to do her best, just like me. My mother's lesson was finally complete. She had not just taught me to rebuild my life, but to help someone else rebuild theirs. As the months passed, a new rhythm settled into my life. The days were a blur of meetings, contracts, and site visits. The nights were a quiet journey through my mother's journals, each entry a new piece of a puzzle I was finally starting to understand. Her story wasn't just about building an empire. It was about building a life of quiet dignity, of purpose, and of unconditional love. She had lived her entire life for me, and now I was living my life for her legacy, for the man she had always believed I could be. My team, Emily and Robert, had become more than just business associates. They were my confidants, my mentors, and my friends. Emily, with her no-nonsense approach and her sharp wit, was the perfect complement to my hands-on style. She taught me about the complexities of finance and management, and I taught her about the practicalities of building and repair. Robert, the quiet financial genius, was a calming presence, a man who could untangle the most complicated financial knot with a serene smile. We were a well-oiled machine, and we were making real change in the communities where my mother's properties stood. Sarah's work continued to be exceptional. She had a keen eye for detail and an uncanny ability to anticipate problems before they arose. She was a professional through and through, and she had earned the respect of everyone on the team. Our conversations were strictly business, but there was a new unspoken understanding between us. We were no longer enemies, We were colleagues, working towards a common goal. One evening, I found a new, larger box of my mother's things in the attic. Inside, I found a photo album. The pages were filled with pictures of my parents, of me as a child, and of our life before Sarah. I flipped through the pages, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. And then I found a section of photos I didn't remember taking. They were pictures of Sarah, taken a few weeks before she left. She was sitting on the porch, a quiet smile on her face, and her eyes were filled with a look of profound sadness. A single photo was taken of her from a distance looking at the house. Her face was a mask of sorrow, and a tear was tracing a path down her cheek. A small folded note was tucked into the album. It was my mother's handwriting. Ethan, I took these pictures. I want you to know that her departure was not as simple as she made it out to be. I saw her crying that day. She loved you, my son. But she was broken. She had a dream of a life she couldn't have. She made a terrible choice, but it wasn't born out of a lack of love. It was born out of a lack of self-worth. Be kind, my dear boy. Kindness is the only currency that truly matters. My mother had known. She had seen the truth behind Sarah's mask of cruelty. She had seen the woman I had once loved, the woman who was a ghost of her former self, and she had held a quiet compassion for her. The hatred I had harbored for 7 years, the resentment, it all began to dissolve. My mother hadn't just taught me to forgive. She had shown me how to love, even in the face of betrayal. The next day I went to see Sarah. I found her in a quiet corner of the Central Avenue property, looking over a blueprint, a tired but determined look on her face. "Sarah," I said, my voice low. She looked up, startled. "I found this." I handed her the photo album, open to the pictures of her. "My mom. She took these. She knew." Sarah looked at the pictures, her eyes welling with tears. "She was a good woman," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "She told me I was making a mistake. She told me to stay. But I was so proud, so foolish. I thought I could have everything. I ended up with nothing. You have Lily," I said gently, "and you have your work. You have a chance to build something real. You don't have nothing." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a gratitude so pure, so genuine, it took my breath away. "Thank you, Ethan, for everything, for giving me a chance." I didn't say anything, I just nodded. The words weren't necessary. The weight of the past, the anger, the pain, it was all gone, replaced by a new foundation. A foundation built on forgiveness, on compassion, and on the knowledge that the greatest wealth of all is the human heart. My mother had not just left me a fortune, she had left me a life where I was not just a survivor, but a builder. A life where I was not just an heir, but a man worthy of the trust she had placed in me. A year had passed since my mother's funeral. The day of the final review with Mr. Henderson arrived. The office felt different now. It was no longer a place of intimidating grandeur, but a space of shared success. Emily and Robert were with me, their faces a mixture of pride and quiet confidence. The past year had been a whirlwind of growth, not just for the company, but for me. I had gone from a man with a hammer to a man with a portfolio, from a victim of betrayal to a man of purpose. Mr. Henderson laid out the final report. The numbers were staggering. We had not only met my mother's challenge, we had exceeded it. We had grown the portfolio by 20%, turning underperforming assets into thriving communities. The charities my mother had named were set to receive a substantial donation, a testament to her quiet generosity and her foresight. "Mr. Carter," Mr. Henderson said, a wide smile on his face, "your mother would be so proud. You have not just inherited a fortune, you have earned it. She gave you a gift, and you have honored it with your hard work and your integrity. The estate is now fully yours, no more conditions." The weight lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a profound sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the journey, the lessons I had learned, and the man I had become. My mother's will had not just been a legal document. It had been a roadmap to my own self-discovery. That evening, I went back to my mother's house. It was still the same, quiet and peaceful, but it no longer felt empty. It felt full, filled with the presence of her love, her strength, and her wisdom. I sat on the porch looking out at the twilight, the city lights of Phoenix twinkling in the distance. I thought about the man I was a year ago, lost and grieving, a man who believed his best days were behind him. And I thought about the man I was today, a man with a purpose, with a future, with a strength he never knew he had. A car pulled into the driveway. It was Emily. She was no longer just my colleague. She was my partner. We had spent the past year building something incredible together, and in the process, we had found a connection, a quiet understanding that had blossomed into something more. She had seen me at my most vulnerable, and she had stood by me. She was a different kind of partner, a woman of strength and purpose, a woman my mother would have been proud of. "Hey," she said, a soft smile on her face as she walked up the porch steps. "I just wanted to come by. Congratulations. You earned this." "We earned this," I corrected her, taking her hand. Her fingers, strong and capable, laced with mine. The phone buzzed. It was Sarah. I looked at the message, a simple text this time. "Lily's checkup went great. No more heart murmur. Thank you, Ethan." A feeling of peace, deep and true, settled over me. The old wounds were healed. The old angers were gone. My mother had left me more than money. She had left me a legacy of love, of compassion, and of the profound knowledge that a person's worth is not in their possessions, but in their character. I looked at Emily, her face illuminated by the soft light of the porch lamp. I was no longer a man defined by a past betrayal. I was a man building a new future, with a woman who saw me for who I was, and who believed in me as much as my mother had. I was no longer living in the shadow of my ex-wife. I was standing in the light of my mother's love, ready to live the life she had secretly built for me, a life of purpose, of kindness, and of true wealth. The journey was over, but a new, more meaningful life had just begun.